Breaking news. 4 a.m. in the Strait of Hormuz. The sea is flat, the air heavy, and the shipping lane looks like it always does. Lights in a disciplined line, engines pushing steel through black water. Then the USS R picture snaps into focus. Multiple Iranian small craft, some known to be mine layer capable, others fast attack boats built for speed and confusion. Break formation and surge toward the outbound lane like they're chasing a deadline. If you're just tuning in, hit like, subscribe, and comment Hormuz so I know you're locked in. Because the next 30 minutes aren't about headlines. They're about whether the economy keeps breathing. The first warning isn't a missile plume. It's a change in behavior. Boats that should be loitering are now sprinting. Tracks that were parallel are now converging. And in the strait, convergence is a language. A commercial tanker transmits a report that makes every operations center go silent. Underwater shock, loss of propulsion, possible mine. No contrail, no flash, no incoming call of missile inbound. Just a blunt punch under the hull, exactly the kind of invisible violence a sea mine was invented for. Now, the strait isn't closed. Not officially, but it's contaminated by doubt. And doubt is the whole weapon. Escorts begin to shift. A destroyer angles in. Another ship widens its arc. Not to flee, but to build space to maneuver if the lane turns into a trap. Above them, a patrol aircraft extends its orbit and paints the surface with a sweep. CENTCOM's first public line is careful but loaded. U.S. forces are monitoring a maritime threat in the Strait of Hormuz. That's the kind of sentence that sounds neutral until you realize what it means. It means we see it. It means we're counting. It means don't pretend this is an accident. A clearance corridor is ordered. Commercial traffic is told to hold position and prepare for escorted movement. In plain English, stop moving, stay calm, and wait for warships to decide what safe means today. But the corridor is not a solution. It's a pause, because mines do one thing better than any missile. They turn time into leverage. Every minute a lane is suspected is a minute insurers rewrite rates, tankers stack up, and markets spike. Iran doesn't have to sink a fleet. Iran only has to make the world hesitate. Mine countermeasure helicopters lift off and begin patterned sweeps. Tight lines, repeated passes, geometry. It looks slow. It is not slow. It is the fastest, safe way to hunt something designed to be unseen. On secure nets, the U.S. builds the question that matters. Is this one mine, or the beginning of a field? And if it's a field, is it already laid, or being laid right now? The ISR picture keeps feeding the same suspicion. Those mine layer capable craft didn't surge for no reason. Iranian outlets move first in the information war. They call it routine. They call it a U.S. exaggeration. They insist the tanker suffered a mechanical incident. They deny, because denial is cheap, and it buys them the same thing a mine buys, time. The tanker transmits again. Propulsion is still down. The crew is safe, but the ship is a floating blockage in a corridor that cannot afford a floating blockage. Now, let's slow down for 3 seconds, because this is where the human cost starts, even before anyone fires. You are standing watch on a U.S. escort ship, 19 years old, hands on the rail, the smell of hot metal and fuel in your nose, your eyes on a horizon you can't read, your mind doing the math you were trained to do. A mine is unfair. You can't see it. You can't warn it. You only discover it when it chooses you. The convoy concept forms. Tankers line up behind escorts. Helicopters sweep ahead. Sonar operators listen for the one wrong echo, but the strategic decision is already moving past escort, because escort is defense, and defense in the strait is a temporary posture. If the threat is active, if boats are laying mines, then managing it is surrendering initiative. CENTCOM doesn't want a corridor. CENTCOM wants the source removed. The strike package begins to assemble quietly. Aircraft reposition. Sea-launched fires are plotted. Target sets are built from what ISR can prove, what it can infer, and what commanders are willing to risk. The most dangerous moment in any escalation is when both sides believe they're still below war. Because below war, everybody feels entitled. The mine hunt feed returns multiple suspicious contacts, not confirmed mines yet, but shapes that shouldn't be there, objects that don't belong, a pattern that looks like intent. That is enough. The authorization comes down, not a warning shot, not a flare, a simultaneous strike intended to stop the mine layers before they disperse into civilian traffic and vanish. If you think keeping the strait open is non-negotiable, a comment, clear the lane. If you think this is how a regional crisis becomes a regional war, comment, spiral, final coordination, deconfliction, time on target windows. This isn't a movie. It's measured voices turning the sea into a clock. One more update from the helicopters. The suspicious contacts are consistent with mines. And then the quiet ends. Weapons away. In the darkness, the horizon flashes. Sharp blooms that reflect off low clouds. Secondary sparks flicker. Smoke starts to spread along the waterline, and the headline hits before the smell of burning fuel reaches anyone's deck. U.S. Navy strikes Iranian fleet elements. Minelayers targeted. Stay with me. The next minutes decide whether this was deterrence or Chapter 1. Initial battle damage assessment is always wrong, because smoke lies and waves hide wreckage. But the ISR feed shows what matters. Multiple craft are burning, dead in the water, or breaking apart under repeated impacts. The U.S. message is simple. We are not letting you salt the lane. Iran's message is also simple. You just escalated. Tehran's outlets claim civilian fishermen were attacked. They release grainy clips with no timestamps. They say U.S. aggression. They say illegal strike. They do not address the tanker, but the tanker is still there, adrift, and the lane is still suspect. Mine countermeasures continue. Helicopters sweep. Sonar teams mark contacts. Explosive ordnance disposal divers stand by, because the only thing more dangerous than a mine is a mine you think you cleared. A second wave of Iranian fast boats appears on the outer edge of the picture, not rushing in, testing, sampling reactions, looking for an opportunity to claim a victory without giving the U.S. a clean target. This is where deterrence becomes choreography. The U.S. doesn't just need to hit, it needs to be seen hitting the right thing. Another breaking flash. Reports of up to 16 mine-layer-capable craft destroyed. Up to. That phrase is the fog of war in 2 words, because up to can be truth, or propaganda, or both. And in the strait, perception moves faster than ships. Let me be clear, this number stays contested for a reason. Some craft burn and sink, some drift, some are towed away, some are decoys or misidentified. Iran will minimize, the U.S. will maximize. Everyone will clip the footage that serves their narrative. But here's the strategic reality. You don't need 16 wrecks. You need enough wrecks that no one else volunteers to lay the next mine. CENTCOM releases a statement that threads the needle. An active maritime threat was detected. U.S. forces acted in collective self-defense and defense of international navigation. The key phrase isn't self-defense, it's international navigation. That's the legitimacy lane. That's the argument that turns a strike into an act of protection rather than aggression. Iran responds with its own framing. The U.S. attacked Iranian naval forces in sovereign waters. Iran reserves the right to respond. The words are predictable. The timing is what matters. Because now every commander is watching the same clock. If Iran retaliates fast, it can claim initiative. If it retaliates slow, it looks deterred. And this is where the entire Gulf goes on edge. Because retaliation doesn't have to be missiles. Retaliation can be drones, or rockets, or a swarm at a distance, or a mine you never find. A U.S. destroyer shifts position to cover the convoy lane. Radar rotates, the air picture tightens. A second escort joins, and now the convoy isn't just escorted, it's covered by overlapping sensors and weapons. Meanwhile, the minehunt results start to separate fear from fact. Several suspicious contacts are reclassified, but not all. Some objects remain consistent with mines, which means the strike may have stopped the layer, but it did not erase what was already placed. And that's the trap of mines. The moment you think you won, you still have to prove the water is clean. Now we reach the climax that most people don't understand. The climax isn't the explosions. The climax is the test convoy. Because a lane isn't open because someone declares it. It's open when someone risks a tanker. Tankers begin to line up behind escorts. Captains argue with owners. Owners argue with insurers. Insurers argue with math. Everyone wants certainty, and nobody can get it. A U.S. officer on a bridge stares down the lane and knows the truth. The first ship through is the proof. Everything before that is theater. Here comes the second-person moment, because this is where pressure becomes personal. You are on the lead escort. The sea is still dark, but now it's lit by work. Helicopters strobes overhead, searchlights cutting cones across the water. Sailors moving with the speed of people who know mistakes become headlines. You feel the convoy behind you, even if you can't see every hull. You feel it like weight. Every contact report hits your chest. Every possible mine is a question with a price tag. The mine-hunting helo marks a contact dead ahead in the outbound lane. The words are calm, the meaning is not. The convoy slows. The world holds its breath. EOD procedures begin. A controlled detonation is planned because you don't disarm uncertainty. You remove it. The controlled blast echoes low and hollow. Water lifts. Foam spreads. The lane looks the same afterward, because water always hides the fact that it just tried to kill you. Another contact, another mark, another decision, and this is where rumors start feeding on themselves. Some accounts claim the U.S. cleared the whole lane. Some claim it's a lie. Some claim Iran has more mines. Some claim Iran lost control of its boats. Most people don't know, but everyone feels. A new report crosses. Iranian fast boats are regrouping farther back, outside the immediate corridor. Not charging, waiting, watching. Iran is trying to keep one hand on escalation and one hand on deniability, because if they fire openly, the U.S. can answer openly. If they threaten silently, the U.S. has to guess. The U.S. continues to push a narrative of measured force. Precision strikes against mine-laying assets, ongoing defensive operations, commitment to keeping the strait open. Behind that narrative is the hard calculation. If the lane stays closed, Iran wins without winning. The first tanker in the test convoy begins moving again, creeping behind escorts like an animal stepping around a trap. This is the moment the Gulf listens for. A sonar operator calls out routine, then not routine, a faint contact, a return that isn't supposed to be there. The convoy halts again, and every market on Earth feels the pause, because a pause in the strait is a pause in the world. If you're still watching, type yes right now, because we're at the decision point. Do they press forward and prove deterrence, or do they stop and admit the strait can still be choked? Commanders choose caution over theater. The lane is swept again. Another contact is neutralized. The convoy restarts. Slow, deliberate, controlled. This is what modern naval power looks like in reality. Not cinematic speed, but disciplined risk management under a spotlight. Iran issues a statement claiming victory through resistance and warning of consequences. The U.S. releases imagery of burning craft and repeats the justification, defense of navigation. And between those two narratives is the truth that matters. Shipping does not care about speeches. Shipping cares about confidence. The convoy clears the worst of the corridor. Tankers move, one by one, behind the shield of escorts. It's not normal traffic yet, but it's motion. And motion is the first step back to normal. By 7, the information space is a battlefield. Some outlets repeat 16 mine layers destroyed like a final score. Others insist the number is inflated. Iran denies it was laying mines at all, and analysts argue over video frames, smoke plumes, and silhouettes. But here's the strategic takeaway, and this is the part I want you to remember. Mines are designed to turn uncertainty into power. The U.S. response was designed to turn certainty back into power, not certainty about politics, certainty about consequences. Because if mine-laying becomes a cost-free lever, the strait becomes a hostage. And if the strait becomes a hostage, every crisis in the region gets a new fuse. So, was this deterrence? Or did it light the fuse anyway? That's the question hanging over the Gulf tonight. Because if Iran chooses a visible retaliation, missiles, drones, open attack, then the next U.S. move becomes bigger, faster, and harder to control. But if Iran chooses silence, deniable mines, covert sabotage, harassment, then the lane stays open on paper, while fear keeps it half closed in reality. Either way, the strait has been reminded of something brutal. The most dangerous weapon in a narrow waterway isn't the one that explodes. It's the one that forces everyone to stop moving. If you think the U.S. did what it had to do, comment deterrence. If you think this is how wars start, comment first chapter. And subscribe, because the next update won't be decided by what was said. If you want the next update the moment it breaks, stay subscribed. Comment what you think Iran does next. Mines, drones, or a stand-down, and I'll pin the sharpest analysis at the top of the comments. It'll be decided by the next contact on sonar.